Resident Evil, the game that kicked off one of the most iconic horror franchises and the franchise that would later define third-person shooters and make them what they are today. The original and its remake in 2002 have become some of the greatest video games of their time. But much like anything, I'm sure there are some things about Resident Evil 1 that I bet you didn't know. The original game's graphics haven't exactly aged well, and it isn't particularly the most gruesome game ever. Especially with the newer Resident Evil remakes and sequels, it looks even more dated than it did in 2002 with the remake of the original. I bring this up because it was weirdly censored in multiple places for multiple releases, with the exception of the DS version. The original was in black and white and had some pretty shoddy special effects, evidently because they didn't have the budget. But in the uncensored version, it has gore and colour and a severed hand, but in another version, it doesn't. And even when they claimed to have uncensored it, it was still censored. In the remake, two examples of censorship are present. Firstly, being that originally, if the hunter did their insta-kill swipe, they would have decapitated you. And the second being when you blow up the tyrant, as in the HD remaster, his body gibleting is covered up by a bigger explosion on top of the initial one. Resident Evil was originally going to be a remake of a previous Capcom game called Sweet Home, which was based on a movie of the same name. Sweet Home is about a group of filmmakers exploring a seemingly abandoned mansion as they attempt to photograph some paintings, and getting haunted by ghosts along the way. The thing is, it came out in 1989 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, making it severely unscary. Hence why a remake was initially proposed. The game was also originally called Biohazard and still is in Japan. However, it was changed to Resident Evil after a DOS game shared the same name as well as a band from New York. Resident Evil was the popular choice amongst staff due to its setting and its friendly inhabitants that like to nibble on your ankles. The cast of the original 1996 game, both for the voice acting and live action scenes, have become a bit infamous for their fucking atrocious acting and extremely uncomfortable long pauses between conversations.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
Joseph!
What? What is this?
It's Forrest. Oh my God.
That's right. This is the ultimate life form. Tyrant! Chris? Stop it!
No! Don't go!
What the hell was that?
The bad acting was caused by a localization error due to the game originally being developed in Japan. Now, in Japan they pick from a small talent pool of English-speaking actors instead of spending money on big-name actors or even just to fly people from different parts of the world, meaning the actors can be very hit or miss. Because of their amazing performances,
Master of unlocking.
the majority of them have done little to no other acting since the original game, with the exception of Rebecca's voice actor who voiced characters in other PS1 era games such as Tekken. The model for the remake characters are also based on real people, with Jill's being Julia Voth and Rebecca's being Japanese pop star Ayumi Hamasaki. The most interesting of the bunch is Chris, who apparently is a mashup of a few different people, which, as you can probably guess, isn't overly common in the video game industry. The most likely people who were used for his model, however, were Ruben Langdon and Matt Mullins. There aren't that many Easter eggs in Resident Evil, but I'll still mention some quick-fire Easter eggs that are worth mentioning, but they're so minor that they don't require a full spot.
What was that? That was the spawn of Satan.
I saw the fire come out of her mouth.
The reveal of the shark has a very similar look to the shark reveal from Jaws. Fun fact, Jaws is actually the first ever blockbuster to be called a blockbuster. That has nothing to do with Resident Evil, shut up! One of Chris's alternate costumes in the remake is a reference to Brad Pitt's character from the movie The Mexican. Jill's commander outfit is a reference to Sarah Connor from the Terminator movies. Before the original box art was chosen, there was another one before that was later scrapped, which is just a screen grab of Sylvester Stallone? Oh, which is just a screen grab of Sylvester Stallone from the movie Judge Dredd, although the artist denies that it has any relation to him. The room that contains the puzzle relating to the paintings has a bunch of crows sitting around on top. If you get the puzzle wrong, they will attack you, being a reference to Alfred Hitchcock's movie The Birds. The use of typewriters as saving points is a reference to The Shining. And finally, in the remake, when you type mole into the X-ray puzzle, which was the answer from the original, you'll hear tofu from the second game. Much like any other Resident Evil game, there are some cool unlockables for beating the game. While there aren't any in the original, there are a few interesting ones in the remake. For example, beat the game on normal to unlock hard mode. Beat the game on hard mode to unlock invisible enemy mode. I don't know why you'd put yourself through that, to be honest. The game's hard enough as it is. To unlock real survival mode, which disables auto-aiming, linking inventory chests, and sets the game to hard automatically, beat the game once. Beat the game in under 5 hours on normal or hard to unlock the infinite pistol Samurai Edge, and under 3 hours for the infinite rocket launcher. Beat the game twice with both characters to unlock each unique costume. Beat the game once with both characters to unlock one zombie mode, where the forest will chase you around the mansion, and shooting him will cause the mansion to explode and end the game. Resident Evil's remake for the GameCube is widely regarded as one of the greatest games of all time. While I personally don't think it is as good as people make it out to be, I can certainly appreciate some elements of it. Definitely not the fixed camera angles though. Oh my god. One clever thing about the remake is how they changed some parts of it from the original to throw old players off and to improve the experience. Several puzzles were reworked or just flat out changed. New areas were added, such as the graveyard, which was supposed to be in the original. The notorious Crimson Heads, which were zombies that would come back to life if you didn't burn or blow their heads off. Lisa Trevor, who's this deformed mess, who actually has a pretty integral point in the RE story. And the dogs in the window don't jump through. Until you walk the other way. Much like any game, there was quite a bit of COD content which wasn't implemented for whatever reason. In the original prototype, there was actually a co-op mode, and there were also 4 protagonists, before being cut down to 2. In fact, one of these characters was supposed to appear in the scene where Jill gets saved by Barry after nearly becoming a Jill sandwich.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
There were several designs for costumes that didn't make it into the remake, such as stealth and business for Jill, and karate and bro suits for Chris. Some unused items were found in the game files, which include the Dum Dum rounds, which would have been alternate ammo for the Colt Python, wood, pickaxe, oil, and flamethrower fuel. There were also some unused lines, such as Jill finding a broken item.
It's slightly broken, but it's still usable. I'll take it with me.
A voice crack from Chris.
Rebecca!
And Rebecca doing her best porn audition.
Let me try using both at the same time, but I escaped through the other draft hole.
Are you winning, son?
Then I came... Ouch! Ouch!
Dad, I can explain. As stated before, there are many different versions of the original Resident Evil. You have the original on the PS1, the Sega Saturn port that added the tick enemies, which replaced the hunters. It also added new costumes and a battle mode. A DS version which was completely reworked for the system, and even a Game Boy version that was in development but wasn't officially released. Side note, by the way, you can actually find working builds of this version online quite easily and can run them through an emulator such as OpenEMU. Now, the original soundtrack featured in the 1996 version was made by these 3 guys. I'm not going to try and pronounce their names because I know I'll butcher them. However, the DualShock version of the game was composed by Mamoru Samaraguchi. He was someone who was seen as the modern-day Beethoven, thanks in large part to the fact that he was starting to lose his hearing before apparently going completely deaf. Due to the success of the original version, Capcom hired him to compose the soundtrack for this sort of remastered version, which would have actually been a pretty big selling point for some people in Japan. However, it was later discovered that he didn't write any of his compositions as he wasn't very skilled at doing so. He instead had a ghostwriter do the majority of his composing. Due to this surfacing, there was also an investigation done to see if he was actually deaf, because some people say that he actually reacted to certain noises. And his own ghostwriter publicly confirmed that the whole thing was an act to try and create a bit of mystique around his name. Because of this, modern day copies of the DualShock version, specifically the ones you can get on PS3, sound a bit off. The most infamous example is the mansion basement. Here's the original. And here, no joke, is the DualShock version.
Yeah.
There's a question I've been wanting to ask for a very long time. Tame Impala, the name, where does it come from? Because I've worked with a lot of Impalas and I'm yet to meet a tame one.
Interesting. Of course, you're a vet. I just...